Hey guys, this is going to be the final portion of the entire video. Again, sorry I had to make it 3 parts, but it was really way too long, so it needed to be done. This portion of the video is going to be 73 maps up until 78, even including 79 maps and what to do with them. And there's not much more to say if you've seen the the previous videos. A lot of tips, a lot of tricks. Hopefully useful to you guys. My personal opinion on what to run and what not to do, how to roll maps, etc. And that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoy these and have fun and good luck with your maps. And here we go. We get to 73s. I think 73s are the portion of the game where everything kicks in, right? You chisel every single map. Because at this point you're already probably heavily overleveled. Not really heavily overleveled because you can't really say that in the beginning of the league, but you're probably at a point where you shouldn't be running these maps, right? If you had different maps, you should be running higher maps. But they're so good that you can really manage, especially Dry Peninsula and Canyon. Well, specifically Dry Peninsula and Canyon. So yeah, Canyon, I think one of the best maps in the game. The mobs are beetles and carrion queens. Carrion queens just drop a crap ton of everything. If you can get pack size or magic monsters on carrion queens, it's not good, but if you get it on beetles, it's mind-blowing good. So the or pack size, for instance, just the sheer amount of mobs that spawn in the map, it's crazy. And it's a very short map, very easy to run. Just kind of zigzag your way through it, so it makes for a really good map. And the mob type tends to drop a lot of maps just because of, again, the sheer amount of them. Kind of like monkeys out of a jungle valley, right? They don't have a good quantity on them, but they drop a lot. So yeah, I think you should be definitely start and put your currency into these maps, because also you have to think about this way. If I have a canyon and 73s are, if you're running 73s at the day of the league, you're incredibly lucky, like incredibly lucky in my opinion. So you just have to count them as money. That's essentially what maps are, money. Um, So if you roll them properly and you get more maps, you can sell those maps and get the money back, or even get additional money. That's how I was able to run those 120 quantity maps, because I had the money out of selling other maps. So just keep that in mind. It is so important. And I actually just noticed that my cam is not showing anymore. Wow, that took me a long time. Eh, it's kind of whatever, actually. Okay, so where did we end? Yeah, Canyon. So that was also my problem. I'll kind of talk about this later after we finish up with these maps, but I'll talk about why you should really count maps as money. Okay, so cells. Cells is kind of like torture chamber. It's not very good. The boss can be kind of rippy. It's a extra projectile void bear. But in general, a lot of dead ends. The mob density doesn't tend to be too good. The rolls don't seem to affect it too much, just because of the small amount of mobs that are implicitly in there. But it can be very good. Dark Forest, probably one of the rippiest maps. The boss is Oak, but that's pretty simple. The problem with Dark Forest is that the implicit mobs are devourers, right? So in something like Bloodlines, it's so rippy, right? So what people tend to do is they tend to run variety of mobs on it, roll variety, or roll humanoids, or roll, even undead sometimes, even though undead it's not really good. So I tend to go the YOLO way and roll pack size, but it's kind of crazy. I don't recommend it. So be very careful about this map. Be very cautious. It can be very rippy if you don't roll it properly. If you take the YOLO route of things. Dry Peninsula map, probably one of my favorite maps. It's a Very straightforward map, very good mob density. There tends to be a lot of humanoids. The boss is the boss. You'll see the boss. The boss is not really a problem as long as you approach it smart, and you don't get devours in the room or something. But yeah, one of my favorite maps. Great mob density. Like I said, in general, humanoids drop a lot of maps, so I do recommend running dry peninsulas and putting all your currency into it. And yeah, 74s. Oh god, 34 minutes. I told you guys this is gonna be a long one. I'm really trying to shorten this up, but it's I feel like a lot of people just invest into all the wrong maps, and that's why it ends up being like that. Gorge map. So George is people's favorite map, and why it tends to be people's favorite map is because, well, at least in my opinion, the map itself is not very good, but it is very linear, and the pack size can be very good on this map. It's a very long map, so you really benefit out of movement speed, but it's very, very, very straightforward, right? So, the things that you benefit the most out of this map is magic monsters, by far. For some reason, rolling magic monsters on a gorge map basically allows you to have magic monsters pretty much every single pack. It's kind of crazy. It's literally, in some good rolls, it's literally pack of white mobs, pack of blue mobs, pack of white mobs, pack of blue mobs. There's so many. So magic monsters is definitely my favorite. Pack size doesn't seem to affect it too much, but obviously you can roll it. And yeah, if you can, these are 74s are the maps where you should be rolling them difficult. You can get 76s out of this, which is a big freaking deal. It's like a really big deal. The jump from 73 to 74 is a big deal, and the 74 to 76 is just it matters so much. So 74s you should really be pulling all your currency into it, but other than George, there really aren't any easy maps like this. So yeah. We go into a maze. The last boss is Vaal, so you're probably not gonna be doing the boss. You might be, but he can one-shot you with a slam. He can two-shot you with the rocks. It tends to be rippy, but you should know what your character is capable of. Think about it as like a 150% merciless Vaal, right? So you should be able to know what your character can take and what it can't take. Um, and yeah, it's a decent map. It tends to be very big, a lot of obstacles, very random. But in my perspective, the I think the implicit mobs are Vol Fallen, and they tend to drop a lot of maps, so I kind of like it. But I would definitely roll it Rippy because the mobs tend to be slow, and yeah, so rolling 100 plus quantity with some favorable for your specific character mods should be very good for you. Olmec Sanctum. Um, this is kind of different than all the other unique maps. And why it's different is because there are two approaches to this map. Run, there are four bosses in this map, right? But there are white mobs between the bosses, so to say. But they're not really between the bosses. You don't have to do the boss to run the next set of white mobs. There are four ways, or four ways or three ways. I'm not sure. I don't remember. It's like no, I think it's four ways because there's every element. I'm pretty sure. So you can clear the white mobs, get to the boss, and not do it. There are easy and hard bosses. People consider the fire one easy, and I think the cold one easy, and then the lightning and chaos one are super rippy. So the mobs on the way are also specific to that element or chaos, right? So the mobs tend to be okay to deal with, but the chaos mobs can be problematic and yada yada yada. What most people do with this map is that they vol orbit. So what it gives you, it can get a plus. You can get a +1. You can get a -1. You can re-roll it to another 74 map. You can re-roll the Olmecs into a rare map. I tend to vol orbit. I think it's worth the risk. I think it's way better than just running the white mobs, and hey, worst case scenario, nothing happens to it. Well, I guess that's not worst case scenario, but most of the time nothing happens to it, and you just run it without any downside, and you took that risk to get a +1, which is huge. Getting a 75 out of a 74 is huge. Residence, last boss is Dominus. You don't want to be doing that unless you know what you're doing. Uh, it's a series of floors with kind of tiny rooms, so the mob density, while being pretty low, the pack size tends to be good, so it benefits from pack size a lot. But you're not gonna see too many mobs. Like every room, there's a pack, and there's like 5, 6 rooms per floor. So it's not that good, but yeah. I feel like I missed the map actually. Now speaking about the rooms and stuff like that, Vol Pyramid is what I missed. Yeah, Vol Pyramid is kind of like a residence, so don't really recommend it too much on 68s. Underground River, it's a little bit of a tunnel, but it's a lot clearer. I like Underground Rivers, but it doesn't. I don't think it's very good for map drops. But I would still run it. I mean, if you compare it to Residence and Maze, it's definitely the better map. But a proper rolled gorge is superior by far. But when it comes to 74s, I think Underground River is second best, and then Residence, and then Maze. But in general, they're okay maps, I think. Yeah, now that I think about it, 74s tend to be okay. And I mean, the potential for 76s is just so huge. Underground River also has an easy boss, which, you can get some 76s out of. Bazaar. Bazaar is a 75 map. Again, at this point, pretty much since 73s, you put all your currency into it. If you can run higher quantity maps, some rippy maps, freaking do it. It's well worth it. Very, very important to put in the money because 75s sell, and they sell for a lot of currency. That was the biggest issue for some people. Nemesis, people didn't get map drops. Everyone was mad. Hardcore Onslaught, very difficult. If you could run 77 maps, even for like a couple hours, it was mind blowing, and you'd save up forever for those maps. Then Invasion came, and the biggest problem people had with Invasion was that there was no return. Right? You'd kill the boss, and it didn't freaking do anything. It didn't. It dropped one rare item. Like who. But it was so rippy. But what people completely disregarded was the fact that they dropped a shit ton of maps. Like, they pretty much had a 50% chance to drop a map or something. It was ridiculous how many maps they dropped. And at that point, a 77, a 78 map was essentially an Exalted Orb. If you could meet a scary mob every now and then in the game, pretty much once per zone at that, in that specific timeline, that would have a 50% or so, let's say 30%, let's say 20%, 20% chance after you kill it to drop an Exalted Orb. Would you not kill it 100% of the time? You would always kill it. Very important to do that stuff. Same with Beyond. Beyond just like spat out mobs everywhere, and these mobs dropped so many maps. You didn't need any mechanic, you didn't need anything. Whatever you would do, these Beyond mobs would just drop maps all the time. You'd get so much EXP. It was crazy reward, right? So just keep that in mind. Try and treat it that way. Every map is currency. Investing into a map means investing into a brighter future, getting more maps, getting more currency. Everything's great. And these are really, 75s are really the breakpoint. 75s are really the maps that can sell really, really well, especially plateaus, even later on into the league, because they have the potential of dropping 77s, and it is crucial. It is crucial to run 75 maps. So, Bazaar. Bazaar has an okay layout. The statues are pretty okay. It tends to be kind of rippy. The bosses can be very random. The bosses can completely do no damage to you because they're based off of auras, so they can do no damage to you or they can one-shot you. So a lot of people tend to disregard, but once you've seen some of the one shots on a on bazaar bosses, you have to be very very careful. So a pretty decent map. I think probably the worst 75. Yeah, by far the worst, but yeah. Death and Taxes kind of similar to Olmex. You don't really run it for EXP. You only run it for the monies, but the monies tends to be not worth it. So I would Vol Orbit. Plateau, one of people's favorite maps. It's like a, it's basically like a mountain ledge, right? But um, it tends to not drop maps, at least in my experience. People say it drops maps. It's kind of random. The mob density sometimes is very good, sometimes it's very bad. If you want a lot of easy XP, plateaus are the thing to run, but I don't know if they're particularly. I actually skipped Necropolis. If they're particularly good for map drops. It's from my experience, it's just very very random, but they're incredibly good for EXP. Necropolis. Necropolis, the implicit mobs are necros. There are a lot of undead mobs. The mob density tends to be amazing, but there are a lot of dead ends. You tend to get stuck. It tends to be sometimes rippy because you get put in such a bad position that an exile or something can kill you. I mean, the biggest amount of deaths to Magnus, the Flame Blast exile, I've seen on Necropolis because people would just get stuck. They wouldn't have the visibility. They'd get off screened. Necropolis will do that to you, but probably when it comes to map drops, it is the best 75 just because of the sheer amount of mobs. So, even though I think it gives, out of 75s, it gives you the highest amount of EXP when you finish the map, you tend to run them for a longer time than the other ones, especially if you compare it to a plateau. So, you have to take that into account. You know, not having more damage doesn't mean you have more clear speed. Uh, Getting more EXP out of a map, but running it twice as long as another map isn't necessarily good. But if you're looking for map drops on 75s, I think Necropolis is where it's at. We move on to 76s. 76s are huge, like I've said before. Put all your currency into 76s. If you're just starting, if you've got a couple 75s, if you're rolling your highest map, put everything you've got into 76s. I tend to roll them really freaking rippy because they can be so good. Academy is probably one of my favorite maps. It's kind of a museum layout, although it's a little bit more straightforward. Um, Academies are just very, very, very freaking good in my opinion. A lot of humanoids, a lot of mobs. There are dischargers and freeze pulsers, so be careful about those. And yeah, the boss has a unique mechanic where it's a cast when damage taken tornado, so that can be rippy. He also has Hex Font on him, so he can curse you with vulnerability, out to attack you with a book, and you get hit for 4k life, 5k life. Kind of rippy, but if you know what you're doing, yeah. And also take into account the fact that it's cast when damage taken, so if you degen him, he's still gonna cast some tornadoes by default, but he's not gonna spam them, right? So if you can degen him with Righteous Fire or like a poison arrow, it tends to be very good. Crematorium map, I think is very random. I'm not a big fan of crematoriums. The boss is incredibly rippy. It's basically Fire Witch from the coast, but she does tremendous amounts of damage. Don't think Arctic Armor will help you. She uses Firestorm and it just hits you for like 2k every hit, so reducing it by 200 or whatever your Arctic Armor does is not very good, right? I think I'm running out of disk space soon. Holy snap, 50 minutes. Alright, Precinct. My favorite 76 map. Lots of humanoids, lots of map drops, very, very good. I highly recommend you run a Precinct if you have the option of running other. Nah, actually, I would prefer an Academy over a Precinct, but Precincts are kind of random. But if you hit a good Precinct, oh man, it always drops maps, at least for me. It always dropped me maps. I loved getting a Precinct because I knew that I'm gonna get a 77 or another 76. Precincts always pay, in my opinion. But again, kind of have to roll it. And the boss is the lightning whippersnapper guy from Lunaris. Uh, might be rippy with the wrong map mods. It is lightning strike, so be careful about that. Shipyard. Shipyard is to some people the best 70 like top tier map. Um, Shipyard, a lot of humanoids. It's in a docks layout, so uh, yeah, it's pretty easy to run. The boss is just a joke. He has Molten Shell that hits for a lot, but other than that, it's Gravicious. He just does nothing. So be careful about the Molten Shell, nothing else. Um, Lots of mobs, very small map, huge mob density. People really like this map. I really like it too. In general, I think 77s are very strong. The next map is a shrine. The boss is piety, like a regular piety fight, both phases. So unless you know what you're doing, I would avoid it. I highly recommend you use something like a lightning warp or leap slam or something to get around the ledges to really clear this efficiently. Then you can go around and then go in the middle. That's what some people do. That's what I like doing. I think it's most efficient, and I think it can give more EXP than a shipyard, but it tends to be a lot more rippy, right? So be careful, but it's a very, very, very good map. I mean, I kind of feel silly explaining these because if you've gotten here, you know how to map, like pretty much. That's pretty much it in my opinion. There are some small things that I can mention, but yeah, I mean just roll your maps, shit. It's not that difficult. Courtyard is kind of garbage in my opinion. I definitely prefer a palace. I think everyone prefers the palace because it's not a randomized layout. It's always the same. Courtyard, the implicit mobs are birds, which is ugh. The boss is the trio fight from Dominus, the first three bosses, and yeah, be careful about the boss. And it's a really really annoying map, but it's obviously worth the investment just because it's a 78. It is an exalt you're putting into the map device for the most part. Palace map is yeah, just very very easy to run. The boss is Dominus, so it's like a 300% Dominus, merciless Dominus, so be careful about it. It will pretty much one-shot you 100% of the time with the slam, and yeah, like I said, the layout is always the same, so well, pretty much always the same. So that's why people really like this map. But the implicit mobs are evangelists, so you know, kind of up to you if you want to do it. I mean, it's not up to you if you want to do it, but uh, yeah, I like this map. Let's just say that. Vaal Temple, Temple. Uh, okay, so these maps tend to be a lot rippier than anything else in the game. Why? Well, the boss fight is the second Adziri fight, so the trio. And the only way you can get these if you Vaal Orb at 78 and you get a +1. So really, the mob density is kind of garbage. You tend to get really bad rolls on it, so it's a very difficult map. You know, you have to chisel it before, and you can't really re-roll it if something goes wrong, or you can get a -1, or your courtyard might get some crazy mods that you're never going to be able to run. So Vaal Temples are pretty much never worth it, and even if you get a Vaal Temple that's good rolled, it's not that good EXP. And this is Hatsuri. Holy crap. It's a really long video, huh? Yeah, but I think that's pretty much it. I mean, you can go over the points. I guess I should have said this in the beginning of the video, but you can go over the points, what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Just make sure you roll your maps and make sure you take advantage of stuff like beyond mobs, of invasion bosses and stuff like that. To some people on higher maps, it's worth it to roll beyond. The 12 chaos is actually worth it, but this is mostly in the beginning of the league, and I don't think any of the other ones are worth it. Just make sure to also, yeah, make sure to use the device because it also gives you additional quantity based on the level of your Zana. And I think that's about it. So, if you have any questions, if somebody has actually, for some crazy reason, made it through the entirety of this video, um, yeah, make sure to ask me, but also make sure to check out the Literally map guide. it is called map management and resource because it is very, very, very useful. So, thanks very much for tuning in. Hopefully, this was informative to some of you guys out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.